Good day everyone, my name is Anmi Pilumanas and today I will going to discuss about the Rule 12 of the National Building Code of the Philippines, which is all about the general design and construction requirements. So this rule comprises of different sections starting from the section 1201, the general requirements, section 1202, excavation, foundation, and retaining walls, section 1203, veneer, section 1204, the enclosure of vertical openings, the floor construction, roof construction and covering, and the section 1207 about the stairs, exits, and occupant load. So actually, there are it comprises more sections, but it will be further discussed by the next reporter. So I will going to focus on the section 1201 up to the section 1207. And now let's discuss first about the section 1201, the general requirements. So prior to the construction, so all of the regulations, specifications, and safety standards must be complied and embodied in the administrative order of Department of Labor and Employment. So it is done in order to govern the quality and the characteristics and properties of the materials that are being used in the construction, its methods and its design, and the types of occupancy and classification. So these referral codes are applicable in order to guide the planning, design, layout, content, construction, location, installation, and maintenance of the structures. So for the guidance of the general public, the Secretary shall periodically issue generic list of approved, strictly regulated or banned items, procedures, usages, and the like relative to the design, construction, and use or occupancy of buildings or the structures. So that includes the materials for construction. So unsa to ang mga materials na aprobado o unsa ang mga materials na dili po siya pwede, like daghang mga materials na substandard. So dapat anuhon siya kana ni pilion ng mga good quality na mga materials na dapat gabiton sa construction. So that also includes the processes, the procedures or methods sa pag-construct, the organizational structures, the types of occupancy, and of course the classifications relative to design, construction, and occupancy. Next is the section 1202, the excavation, foundation, and the retaining walls. So when you say excavation, it is a process of digging into the ground to make a hole or channel for environmental restoration, construction, and especially its main purpose is for the foundation of the building. So the methods, the materials used for the excavation or for the foundation of the structure, it should meet the standards of the Civil Code of the Philippines, which is also stated in the article 684 to 686. So all of the process must be accepted and it follows the engineering practice. So the excavation and fills for the buildings, one thing that needs to be considered is the excavation works should not affect or may result danger to any property or occupants, and then it should not be over excavated. It also has a proper excavation depth, which does not require overpinning or extending the foundation or footings of the property. So if this will happen, so ang katong na-assign the person who undertakes the excavation works, he shall be responsible of the consequences. So pwede kasuhan. And then the excavation and the other similar disturbances made on public property shall, unless otherwise excluded by the building official, be restored immediately to its former condition within 48 hours from the start of such excavation, and disturbances by whosoever caused such excavation or disturbances. And of course, before undertaking any excavation works or any drilling in the ground, so the persons who undertakes the excavation, he shall contact all of the public utilities for the safety of the everyone, and of course for the safety also of the workers. And next is the protection of adjoining property. So any person making or causing an excavation to be made below existing grade shall protect the excavation so that the soil of adjoining property will not cave in or settle, and shall defray the cost of underpinning or extending the foundation of buildings on adjoining properties. So before you're going to excavate, so ang katong persons or is assigned or who undertakes the excavation works, so he shall notify the owners of adjoining building not less than 10 days. So before niya himuon to ang excavation, so that the owners of the adjoining properties will be kanang ma-verify niya nga secured ang iyang buildings or protected ang iyang buildings sa katong tao nga na assign sa excavation. So before pa man pod na himuon tong excavation, so there should be a careful and accurate survey of any cracks in the existing adjoining owner's premises should be made, and where possible photographs also should be taken, recorded, and agreed between the parties concerned. Where necessary, telltales should be fixed to cracks with the object of showing any further movements during demolition and excavation. So the cut slopes for permanent excavation should not be steeper than the ratio of 2 horizontal to 1 vertical, and slopes for permanent fills should not be steeper also with the same slope, which is the 2 horizontal to 1 vertical. And then in cases where the excavation passes through a permeable water bearing stratum overlying on an impervious bed, a bench should be formed at the juncture of the strata to carry an intermediate intercepting drain. And then if groundwater is standing at a considerable head around the excavation, measures shall be undertaken to reduce this head by a system of whip holes at the lowest 1/3 section of the excavation wall, or by enclosing the site with suitable sheet piling, or if a water sealing stratum can be reached within a reasonable distance at the bottom of the excavation. So ang trench had na i-create diri asa during excavation is it should be 1.50 meter or deeper, and it shall be provided with suitable means of exit or escape at least every 7.50 meters of its length. So when water is encountered in excavation, so a sump should be maintained below the level of the excavation in order that surface and groundwater can be led into it and pumped out. So kakatry mo na kita mo ng sump sump pumping kanang ang tubig sa groundwater kay gina-release ay kanang pump out siya sa imuhang excavated na area or sa imong excavated na ground, diba? Kay usually manggod ang moisture content ba makapekto siya sa foundation, and it can also ang sump pumping pod or ang pag-pump out sa groundwater kay makatabang siya to hinder the rust sa imuhang mga materials na magamiton. And of course, para mas gwapo ang foundation sa imuhang structure, so dapat should be dry. It should not contain high levels of moisture content sa imong soil. And then let's proceed to the footings, foundations, and retaining walls. So the footings and foundations shall be of the appropriate type, of adequate size and capacity in order to safely sustain the superimposed loads under seismic or any condition of external forces that may affect the safety or stability of the structure. So responsibility na siya sa architect o sa engineer na nasa site or assigned sa site. It should follow the type o sa design sa sa imuhang structure depending sa standards na giset sa secretary, set forth sa secretary. And then if ever nga naapay mga abrupt change sa imong ground or naay mga instability sa soil, so the retaining walls shall be provided with also having also its adequate design and type of construction as being prescribed also by the secretary. And now let's proceed to the section 1203, the application of the veneer to your structures. So when you say veneer, it is a non-structural facing of brick, concrete, tile, metal, plastic, glass, or other similar approved materials attached to a backing or structural components of the building. So its main purpose is to, of course, for the enclosure, ornamentation, and of course for the protection of your buildings or your structures. So it has also design requirements. So first, the veneer shall support no load other than its own weight and the vertical dead load of veneer immediately above. And then the surfaces to which veneer is attached shall be designed to support the additional vertical and lateral loads imposed by the veneer. And of course, it should be non-combustible and corrosion resistant. So dapat fire resistant po ang imuhang veneer para maprotektahan imong structures, especially ang walls sa structures. And now let's proceed to the section 1204 about the enclosure of vertical openings. So for the general requirements, vertical openings shall be enclosed depending upon the fire resistive requirements of a particular type of construction as set forth in the code. So for the elevator enclosures, so the walls and the partitions enclosing elevators and escalators shall be of not less than the fire resistive construction required under the types of construction. So the enclosing walls of elevator shafts may consist of wire glass set in metal frames, but that is only applicable sa entrance side lang sa imong elevator shaft. And then if ang imong structures is more than 2 stories na siya, so it should be equipped with an adequate ventilation through the main roof of the building, provided that in those buildings kadalasan sa mga groups F and G occupancies, diba kay equip man na sila kadalasan ng mga fire extinguishing systems. So ang enclosures dili na kayo required sa mga escalators, diraan na mga types sa occupancies. And then provided sad na sa top sa imuhang escalator naa siya in each story kay naa siya kanang natawag nato nga draft curtain. This draft curtain it shall enclose the perimeter of the enclosed opening and shall extend from the ceiling downward at least 300 millimeters on all sides. So, diri underline na nako para mas maklaro dito siya. And then, the automatic sprinklers shall be provided around the perimeter of the opening and within 600 millimeters of the draft curtain. And then, ang distance sa imuhang sprinklers, it should not exceed to 1.80 meters center to center. And for the air ducts, so the air ducts passing through a floor shall be also enclosed in a shaft. So kadalasan sa mga air ducts sa group A occupancy, so di ba sa group A kanang mga dwelling units, so it should be not be enclosed in a shaft if conforming to the mechanical provisions of the code. Next is the section 1205 pertaining to the floor construction. So first, the floors shall be of such materials and construction as specified under Rule 5 fire zones and fire resistive standards and under Rule 4 the types of construction. So just refer sa NBCP na naa sa inyong gisend sa atua. So nandito sa Rule 5 at sa itong mga klaseng mga materials na kinahanglan ay na usually ginagamit para dili siya kanang mga fire resistant na mga materials. So muna siya imuhang gamiton sa imuhang floor in constructing your floor. So dapat qualified siya sa mga qualifications standards na met niya ang standards when it comes to It's also its type of construction and its fire resistive standards under the Rule 5 and the Rule 4 of the MBCP. And then all floors shall be so framed and secured into the framework and supporting walls as to form an integral part of the whole building. And dapat pod ang type sa imuhang floor construction used shall provide means to keep the beam and the girders from lateral buckling. So dapat nakaano po siya, fit po siya sa imuhang mga walls, sa imuhang beam, ang imuhang floors dapat naka-frame siya sa imuhang supporting walls. Next is the section 1206, the roof construction and covering. So for the roof covering, you can use in any buildings, you can use either fire retardant or ordinary depending upon the fire resistive requirements of the particular type of construction. So the use of combustible roof insulation may be permitted in all types of construction, provided that it is also covered with the roof covering that is approved, and it should be directly applied into the covering of your roof. And then for the roof trusses, all roofs shall be so framed and tied into the framework and supporting walls so as to form an integral part of the whole building. And then the roof trusses, it shall have all joints well fitted and all of the tension members well tightened before any load is placed in the truss. And of course, napoy allowable working stresses of materials in trusses, and it shall be conformed to the code. So dapat po ang imong di ba kay naman dyan na among truss is tapo na siya yung allowable stress na iyang makaya or when once na i-impose na load sa truss nimo. So dapat pasok po ang imuhang allowable working stress sa imong truss kung unsa man ang imuhang loads na imong i-apply dira sa iya. And for the attics, so the opening shall be located in a corridor or hallway of buildings of 3 or more stories in height and readily accessible in buildings of any height. An opening shall not be less than to 600 mm square or 600 mm in diameter. And then the minimum clear headroom of 800 mm shall be provided above the access opening. So for the ladder requirements sa imuhang attic, so you can refer to the Philippine Mechanical Engineering Code. And also the attics must be enclosed it is enclosed attic spaces of combustible construction shall be provided into horizontal areas not exceeding to 250 square meters by fire resistive partitions extending from the ceiling to the roof, except that where the entire attic is equipped with approved automatic fire extinguishing system, the attic space may be divided into areas not to exceed to 700 square meters. So if na siya extinguishing system, so it may exceed, it may be divided to 750 square meters but not exceeding to that area. And then the draft stops shall be installed in trusses roofs between roof and bottom cords or trusses in all buildings exceeding to 2,000 square meters. And then last one is dapat na po siya adequate ventilation ng imong attic. And for the roof drainage system, so dapat ang imuhang pag-install nimo sa roof drains, it should be installed in the low points of the roof and it should be in its adequate size para ma-discharge ng mga tributary waters such as rainwaters. And then you could also provide overflow drains and scuppers. And then, concealed piping. So the roof drains and overflows drains. When concealed within the construction of the building, it should be installed in accordance with the provisions of the National Plumbing Code. And then the roof drainage water from a building shall not be permitted to flow over public property except sa Group A and J occupancy. So except sa mga dwelling units or the agriculture related na mga occupancies. And for the flashing and counter flashing shall be provided at the juncture of the roof and vertical surfaces. Next one is the section 1207, the stairs, exits, and the occupant loads. So the construction of stairs and exits shall conform to the occupant load requirements of buildings, reviewing stands, bleachers, and the grandstands. In order to determine the occupant loads of a particular building structure, so the occupant load permitted in any building or portion thereof shall be determined by dividing the floor area assigned to that use by the unit area allowed per occupant as determined by the secretary. So as you can see here in the table, so di ba natay required or kanang set na unit area per occupant in different types of occupancy. So for example, sa classroom, so ang unit area per occupant is 1.80. So in order for you to para mabaon nimo kung pila ang occupant loads na makaya ani nga specific rooms or classroom, kaya imong i-divide ang floor area divided by its unit area per occupant. So usually ang kadlasan pag naay more than 10 na occupant load sa isa ka portion sa building or particular story sa building, so it should have at least 2 exits. So, di ba kadalasan sa mga classrooms, mga universities, kay tungod in every classroom, so daghan kay mga students. So, usually sa mga high-rise buildings, so nagka-provide na og mga elevators if more than na sa 10 ang occupant load sa isa ka story sa imong building. So, for the exits, every building or structure should have at least 1 exit. In all occupancies, floors above the first story having an occupant load of more than 10 shall not have less than 2 exits. So, muna kong giingon ganiha nga above after sa first story. So, if more than 10 ang occupant loads, so dapat dili siya less than of 2 exits. So, minimum is 2 exits jud pag more than 10. So, each mezzanine floor used for other than storage purposes, if greater in area than 185 square meters or more than 18 meters in any dimension, shall have at least 2 stairways to an adjacent floor. And every story or portion thereof having an occupant load of 500 to 999 shall have at least 3 exits. For the 1,000 or more occupants, it should have at least 4 exits. So, mani siya ay yung required na number sa exits sa particular building. The total width of exits in meters shall not be less than the total occupant load served divided by 165. Such width of exits shall be divided approximately equally among the separate exits. So when it comes to its arrangement, so if only 2 exits are required, so the distance, it should be placed a distance apart to not less than 1/5 of the perimeter of the area served measured in a straight line between exits. And if there are 3 exits that are being required, so they shall be arranged a reasonable distance apart so that if ang isa ka exit is ma-block, so napay other exits na available para makagawa sa particular structure or building. And in the distance to exits, no point in a building without a sprinkler system shall be more than 45 meters from the exterior exit door A horizontal exit passageway, or an enclosed stairway measured along the line of travel. So, in building equipped with a complete automatic fire extinguishing system, so ang distance pwede siya mag-increase to 60 meters. So, remember lang, pag walay sprinkler system, so it should be 45 meters from an exterior exit door. Pero pag naay ang isa ka building na siya automatic equipped, it is powered, it is equipped with extinguishing system, so pwede siya mag-increase to 60 meters ang distance from the exit door. Now, when it comes to the door requirements, so the exit door shall swing in the direction of exit travel when serving hazardous areas with 50 or more occupants. So, it is applicable especially kung may emergency. So, dapat ang imuhang door is like, for example, naka sa sulod sa building. So, ang pag mugawas ka, pag mo-exit ka sa door, so dapat ang iyang direction sa iyang swing is same sa direction sa imong exit sa padung pagawas ang ana. But that's only applicable sa mga hazardous areas, especially sa mga hazardous areas with 50 or more occupants. And then double doors are not used for tributary occupant load of 100 or more. A double acting door shall be provided with a view panel of not less than 1,300 square centimeters. And then the exit door shall have lock that is openable from the inside. Flush bolts or surface bolts are prohibited. So, usually, manggod sa especially sa mga emergency. So, dapat ang exit door maabri siya gikan sa sulod kay para mas madali ra makagawas ang mga occupants without the use of any special effort or any key. Kay siyempre emergency if ever man. And then the width and height should not less than 900 mm and 2 meter respectively. So muna siya ang standard na measurement sa imuhang door. And the no lift of an exit door shall exceed 1.20 meters in width. The floor or landing shall be leveled with or not more than 50 millimeters lower than the threshold of the doorway. And then you can also add additional doors, but approve revolving doors having leaves which will collapse under opposing pressures may be used in exit situations, provided that such doors have a minimum width of 2 meters or they are not used in occupancies where exits are required to be equipped with panic hardware, or at least one conforming exit door is located adjacent to each revolving doors installed in a building, and the revolving door shall not be considered to provide any exit width. And for the corridors and exterior exit balconies, so the width shall not be less than 1.10 meters. And then the corridors and exterior exit balconies with dead ends are permitted, but it should not exceed 2 6 meter in length. And then the required width of corridors and exit balconies shall be unobstructed, wherein except to the trim handrails and doors when fully open shall not reduce the required width by more than 200 millimeters. So doors in any position shall not reduce the required width of the corridor by more than 1/2. And when it comes to the stairways, for occupant load of more than 50, it should not be less than 1.10 meters when it comes to its width. And for the occupants less than 50, it should be 900 millimeters wide. And for the occupants less than 10, it should be 750 millimeters. So, trim and handrails shall not reduce the required width by more than 100 millimeters. For the For the rise and run of the stairways, so the rise of every step in a stairway shall not exceed 200 millimeters, and the run shall not be less than 250 millimeters. So the maximum variations in the height of risers and the width of the treads in any one flight shall be 50 millimeters. And the landings, the circular stairways may be used as an exit provided the minimum width of run not less than 250 millimeters. Okay lang mga circular stairways as long as it will not the run or it will not be less than 250 millimeters. So the landings must not exceed also to 1.20 meters when the stairs has straight run, and distance more than 3.60 meters between landings. And next is the handrails. So the handrails should be 3 meters in width, and all openings in the exterior wall below or within 3 meters measured horizontally of an exterior exit stairway serving a building over 2 stories in height shall be protected by a self-closing fire assembly having a 3/4 R fire resistive rating. So in every building 4 or more stories in height, one stairway na dapat isa ka stairway na connect siya sa imuhang roof. But the roof should have a slope greater than 1 in 3. And in the headroom, every required stairway shall have a headroom clearance of not less than 2 meters. Next is the ramps. So ramps are slope pathways used both inside and outside buildings used to provide access between vertical levels. So mura siya stairs nga pwede ka maka adto sa second floor, third floor through these ramps. Pero ang kalian lang is kana straight lang siya. Like unlike sa stairs is na siya rise and run. So the width of the ramps, it should be same as the corridors. So kung say size width sa imong corridor, so dapat mo pud imong width sa imong ramp. And for the horizontal exit, if conforming to the provisions of the code, a horizontal exit may be considered as the required exit. And then all openings in a separation wall shall be protected by a fire assembly having a fire resistive rating of not less than 1 R. So dapat dili less than 1 R imong fire fire resistant niya nga rating sa imong horizontal exit. And then the capacity shall be determined by allowing 0.30 square meter of net floor area per ambulatory occupant, and if dili ambulatory occupant, so it allows around 1.90 square meters. Next is the exit enclosure. So as you can see in the picture, so the exit enclosure, it should not be its walls shall not be less than 2 R fire resistive construction, and there shall be no openings into exit enclosures except exit doorways and openings in exterior walls. And of course, it also include landings and parts of floors connecting stairway flights, and shall include a corridor on the ground. So dapat na siya stairs pod sa landings na siya stairs o landings sa imuhang exit enclosure. Next is the smoke-proof enclosures. So stairs in smoke-proof enclosures shall be of incombustible construction. Second one, there shall be no openings in smoke-proof enclosures except exit doorways and openings in exterior walls. Third one, the opening from the building to the vestibule or balcony shall be protected with a self-closing fire assembly having 1 R fire resistive rating. So mo yung requirement. And then the exit passageway shall be without other openings and shall have walls, floors, and ceilings of 2 R fire resistance. So mo yung requirements pertaining to the incombustible construction sa imong smoke-proof enclosures. So, you can base, kung para may bawaan pa dyan ninyo, so, pwede mo mag-refer diri sa NBCB, gasend sa atua. So, nandito tanan. And next is the exit outlets, courts, and passageways. So, the enclosure walls shall not be less than 2 or fire-resistive construction. Second, the required width of exit courts or exit passageways shall be unobstructed except as permitted in corridors. At any point where the width of an exit court is reduced from any cause, so the reduction in width shall be effected gradually by a guard rail at least 900 millimeters in height, and then the guard rail shall make an angle of not more than 30 degrees with the axis of the exit court. And of course, pertaining to its slope, so the slope of the exit courts, the slope of the exit courts, it should not exceed in 1 in 10, and then the exit passageway should not exceed in 1 in 8 ratio. And then all openings into an exit court less than 3 meters wide shall be protected by fire assemblies having not less than 3/4 or fire resistive rating. Next, the exit signs and illuminations. So emergency backup lights must be installed on all exit roads in the building, including hallways, stairwells, and corridors, such that anyone with normal vision may see the path to the exit. So dapat sad ang intensity sa light nimo sa imuhang signage is it should not be less than 10.7 lux at any floor. So kani siya usually magod necessary kayo ni siya ay importante kayo nga ang imuhang na siya ang light na gina-emit sa imong signage is visible jud siya, especially during emergency. So, para mas makita din asa ang exit ingana. Next is the aisles. So the aisles shall not be less than 800 millimeters wide if serving only one side, and not less than 1 meter wide if serving both sides. So such minimum width shall be measured at the point farthest from the exit, cross aisle, or fire shall be increased by 30 millimeters of every meter in length towards the exit, cross aisle, or fire. And then the side aisle is not less than 1.10 meters in width. When it comes to its slope, so the slope portion of aisles shall not exceed a fall of in 1 in 8. Next is the seats. So the seat spacing. So the spacing of row seats from back to back shall not less than 840 millimeters. And in the spacing of rows, for 18 seats or less, it should be 450 millimeter. And for the seats of having 35 seats or less, so the spacing for the rows is 500 millimeter, and for the 45 seats or less, it should be 525 millimeter. With the width is not less than 450 millimeters. Next is the reviewing stands, grandstands, and bleachers. So for the height of the stands, so it should be combustible, made of combustible framing and only limited to 11 rows or 2.70 meters in height. And for its design requirements, the minimum unit live load for reviewing stands, grandstands, and bleachers shall be 50 kilograms per square meter of horizontal projection for the structure as a whole. And then the spacing of seats, for the row spacing, the minimum spacing of rows of seats measured from back to back shall be 600 millimeters for seats for those without backrest in open air stands. But for those seats with backrest, it should be 750 millimeters pertaining to its row spacing, and 850 millimeters for chair seating. For the rise between rows, so the maximum rise from one row of seats to the next shall not exceed to 400 millimeters. And for its seating capacity, the width of any seat shall not be less than 450 millimeters nor more than 480 millimeters. And then the number of seats between aisle, it should not be more than 15 seats for open air stands, and for far open, it should not be it should be 6 seats. When it comes to the aisles, it should be provided in all stands, and when an aisle is elevated more than 200 mm above grade, the aisle shall be provided with a stairway or ramp. And then the seats are the seats that are without backrest, so the rise from row to row does not exceed to 300 mm per row, and then the number of rows does not exceed to 11 in height. And then the top seating board is not over 3 meters above the grade, and then the first seating board is not more than 500 millimeters above grade. For the stairs required for the aisle, so when an aisle is elevated more than 200 millimeters above grade, so the aisle shall be provided with a stairway or ramp whose width is not less than the width of the aisle. So muna iyahang requirement pertaining to the stairs sa imuhang bleachers. When it comes to the stairs and ramps, so the stair rise and run, it should not be exceed to 200 millimeters, and the minimum width of the run shall be 280 millimeters. For the slope of the ramp shall not exceed in 1 in 8, and the ramps shall be roughened or shall be of approved non-slip material. And then the handrails, a ramp with a slope exceeding 1 in 10 shall have handrails. When it comes to the guardrails, the guardrails shall be required in all locations where the top of a seat plank is more than 1.20 meters above the grade, and at the front of stands elevated more than 600 millimeters above the grade. For the railings shall be 1.10 meters above the rear of a seat plank or 1.10 meters above the rear of the steps in an aisle when the guardrail is parallel and adjacent to the aisle. And for the exits, so the line of travel to an exit should not be more than 45 meters. And then for those exits are for those stand na on the first seating board not more than 500 millimeters above grade of floor may be considered to have 2 exits when the bottom of the stand is open at both ends. So if there are 3 exits also nga required, so there are more than 300 occupants with the stand, and for open air stands with seats without backrest, or a stand or section of a stand accommodates more than 1,000 occupants. And for the 4 exits required, it should have more than 1,000 occupants. Next is the safe dispersal area. So each safe dispersal area shall have at least 2 exits. If more than 6,000 persons ang na dito sa area, so there should be 3 exits. Pag 9,000 na pod ang naa dito sa area, so there should be 4 exits. So I think that would be all for my report. So thank you so much for listening, and the next part will be reported by the next reporter. So that's actually a continuation for Rule 12 of the National Building Code of the Philippines. And thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.